Tom Pelissero joining us now here, top of hour number 2 in his usual Friday spot. What's up, Tommy P? How are you?
Doing wonderful, Rich. What's up to you and the boys in studio?
Hey, Tom.
That wasn't.
What's up,
that
Tommy?
was. TJ's not there today. Oh, he is there.
Come on,
well, I was going to say that was
Tommy.
the least excited entrance I've had.
Well,
so.
we get yelled at sometimes when we get too
scolded.
excited.
No,
I was a little fired up in the first hour, so I'm calming down.
That made it worse. Now you just made it awkward.
I'm
Like
down.
I'm expecting a warm reception and you didn't give
All right,
me
let's
one.
just do it again.
let's do it over.
Hey, Tom Pelissero
What's up to
joining
my
us.
boys in studio?
Hey!
Tommy. What up, kid?
There we go. That's much better.
That's terrible. All right.
Fellas.
Can you walk us through again? I know we didn't. I wasn't planning on talking about this with you, but I will. Just watch the Patriots being built, and now they're 9-2, and they've won 8 in a row. Do you have any insights on all of this from the draft from last year? Anything that you want to kind of shed light on? Because this is exactly what teams that choose top 5 in the draft a couple years in a row. Hoping that it hits with a quarterback. This is the sort of ascension, quick rocket ship type stuff that everyone's looking for. Tom,
listen, the biggest thing that the Patriots got right in 2024 was Drake May, and I know that that's now the obvious answer. But you go back to draft night, and they were still fielding calls. They had multiple offers. The Giants had showed interest. The Vikings made an offer to go up and get him. I know that Kevin O'Connell was a big fan of Drake May. Obviously, Josh McCown had a pre-existing relationship with Drake May. And it wasn't until about 2-3 hours before the draft that I reported that the Patriots are going to stand pat and make the pick. They wanted to see, do they get the type of Godfather offer that would allow them to move? But it always seemed like they really had a high-level belief in Drake May, who is not, by the way, Rich, a slam dunk in the scouting process. Yes, he had all these traits, and he's a big physical guy with a big arm, and he can make plays, but he was the youngest. He was arguably, of the 6 quarterbacks that went in the top 12, the least ready in terms of the experience level. He was younger than these guys. A lot of them, not everybody's Bo Nix playing 6 years of college football, but Michael Penix played 6 years of college football. Obviously, Caleb had played a ton. All the way through his career. Jaden Daniels had an extended college career at multiple schools. So there were a bunch of different flavors. It was not as if, boy, Drake May is clearly going to be the MVP candidate. He was the 3rd quarterback to come off the board. But regardless of what else happened in that draft, they got the quarterback right. And then, fast forward to January of 2025, they had to make a difficult decision on paper, which was moving on from their handpicked successor in Gerard Mayo, but they had a very clear plan, and they moved within a week to hire Mike Vrabel. They believed, and they knew him very well, that he could lead an instantaneous turnaround. I think that if you even rewind to week 1 of the season, I was at that game against the Raiders. It did not look like it was going to be a quick flip. That was the second half of that game was the best football Geno Smith has played this entire season. They lost to the Raiders in week 1. I believe the Patriots started 1-2.
They did.
But then you saw them begin to start gathering momentum. Mike Vrabel has always had a really good eye for talent, not just in terms of players, but also in terms of his coaching staff. Josh McDaniels, it was kind of an open secret that he was going to be the offensive coordinator. But for instance, Mike Vrabel interviews Thomas Brown for the OC job. He was going to go with Josh, but he's like, this guy's really impressive. All right, hey, man, I can't give you the OC job, but do you want to be the tight ends coach? And Thomas Brown, who's held a bunch of different roles and has always been, he's been a head coaching candidate in the past. He's worked with Sean McVay. He's a great fit. Todd Downing, who had been the OC in Tennessee, he's now the wide receivers coach. Obviously, the defensive coordinator, that's been a tough situation with not having him in the building here recently. But, we had Zach Kerr, who's kind of like when Shane Bowen was the play caller in Tennessee, where it was Mike Vrabel entrusted a guy that most people in the league had never even heard of, but had been with Mike going back to Ohio State, that, all right, Terrell Williams is not going to be able to be the guy. Zach, you're stepping in. You're now calling this defense. And maybe the most impressive thing, Rich, to me, is just when you watch Mike Vrabel interact with his coaches, interact with his players, interact with the officials. He is in complete control of everything surrounding the team. He's not going to cave to public pressure. Why are you not playing Travion Henderson early? Because we don't think he's ready. Then all of a sudden around week 7, week 8, all right, he's ready now.
Sure
and he goes
is.
off for 3 touchdowns last night. Stephon Diggs, what was the whole talk in the offseason? Are they going to cut him before his bonus money is due? Or is he never going to pass a physical? And Vrabel just kind of shrugged off everything in the offseason, and now Diggs looks like the best bargain in free agency. It's a long-winded way of saying, Rich, they made a lot of wise decisions along the way, getting the quarterback a year before Vrabel even got there, and that decision, which was the Crafts and it was Elliott Wolf, those guys got that right, and that's a huge piece of what they're building right now.
And I guess it's a perfect way to segue to the Giants, Tom, because the way you just described the Patriots getting the quarterback right before hiring the coach that is the perfect fit for what's needed, and then to surround the new quarterback with talent, it does kind of set up for the Giants to be next year's Patriots, just as a way of making an analogy, because Dart's there. They're going to get Scattaboo and Malik Neighbors back. Defensively, they've got studs all over the place, right? I mean, the question is who's the right guy? And I give you the floor on what the Giants are thinking as to who the right guy could be. Tom.
Well, first of all, Rich, you make a great point, because people have asked me, do you think this is a good job? It's absolutely a good job. I mean, think about the patience that ownership exhibited with Brian Daboll even over the past few years. Yes, they got into the playoffs that first season. They won a playoff game. They overachieved. But his firing this week was the culmination of a lot of different things. This is the third straight year that the Giants started 2-8. And they did that with blowing 4 double-digit leads on the road. If they can get a stop in the 8 seconds left in week 2 against the Cowboys, maybe the season is different. If they can not blow an 18-point lead in the fourth quarter against the Broncos, maybe this plays out differently. Even the Bears game, they've got that game seemingly in hand, and somehow it gets away from them. It's that repeat inability to finish games that brought us to that point that they felt like they needed to make a change right now. But if you are a coach on either side of the ball, you're looking at this and saying, this is not a bare cabinet. We've got building blocks. It's not just Jackson Dart. You've got 2 running backs. Obviously, Cam Scattaboo right now is out for the season, but Cam Scattaboo, if I'm not mistaken, had more yards from scrimmage than Saquon Barkley at the time that he suffered that injury. They've got Tyrone Tracy. Malik Neighbors is out for the season, but he should be fully healthy coming off of the torn ACL for 2026. They've got a left tackle in Andrew Thomas. They've got, I believe, 3 of their starting offensive linemen who are under contract. And then defensively, you look at those guys, Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau and Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence on the interior. Even on the back end, you've got Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo. You're walking into a situation where you can convince yourself, hey, if we get the right people in place, this should not take long to get this thing going in the right direction. So who is the right coach for that situation? My understanding in talking to people involved there is that it's not a linear, hey, we got to have an offensive coach. Even though you look at the Giants' history going back essentially since Bill Parcells, they've hired a series of offensive-minded coaches. Joe Judge was a little bit different. He was predominantly a special teams guy, but it trained on offense. But, Ben McAdoo and Pat Shurmur and Brian Daboll, that's not going to be necessarily a prerequisite, even though getting Jackson Dart going and developed the right way is certainly a big part of it. In terms of the defensive coaches, if you're thinking, all right, I'm coming in and I've got a pass rush and I've got at least some parts on the back end to work with, this could be an attractive job to a variety of different coaches. I know this week they play the Packers. Jeff Hafley, who is from New Jersey, this would be his dream job, a team he grew up rooting for. He's got one of the best defenses in the NFL, and he's got head coaching experience at Boston College. I would think a guy like that would be in the mix. I would think that Steve Spagnuolo, even Antonio Pierce, who have histories with the Giants, would potentially be under consideration. And then you've got this broad swath of all these young coaches around the league. I should mention Matt Nagy and the experienced bucket as well. But there's not a Mike Vrabel, all right? There's not a slam dunk. This guy's definitely getting a job this year. Nor is there a Ben Johnson, a guy who is a young, up-and-coming offensive mind who's got such a track record and has had so much interest in head coaching interviews in the past. You're like, okay, if Ben wants to take one, he is going to get one this year. The closest thing is probably Joe Brady, but Sean McDermott is having to fend off questions this week about is he going to fire Joe Brady as his offensive coordinator. I do think Joe Brady's name is going to be hot. It's just not quite on par with Ben Johnson. So I would anticipate this being a methodical process for the Giants. They've now got a jump start on that. Joe Schoen is going to lead the search process. He is not going to be the one making the final call. That's going to go up to layers of ownership here. But this is a good job, and a lot of it does start with the organizational belief. And you would think the belief among the coaches watching the tape that Jackson Dart, he's not a fully developed product. He's got to learn how to take some contact off his body, not take all those hits. But he's got upside that is going to intrigue a lot of people, especially, Rich, when you remember this 2026 quarterback draft class is not shaping up to be one where you want to need a quarterback.
Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. Injuries this weekend. Oh, by the way, nice. Did you guys see that? He just flashed a Los Pollos Hermanos mug right there.
Wow. Wife was in Albuquerque on a business trip last year. This was a solid find.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sure it's the wife's business trip mug. It's not like you're not you don't have some sort of lab going back there, Tom. Underneath, like what is this? Okay.
We're not making the blue stuff. That's not ours.
All right, breaking Tom here on the Rich Eisen Show, not just news. All right, so I'm sorry, you flashed the Pollos Hermanos mug. It threw me off. All right, so Purdy's back, right? Purdy's back and Pearsall's back. So where's Ayuk? How close are we to fully constituted San Francisco's offense? Because wouldn't that be the irony? Is the defense loses so many big players, but the offense gets everybody back and carries the day?
Well, they're going to have to, Rich, because it's a bunch of rookies playing over there. Robert Saleh is doing his best to scheme it up, but there's only so much you can scheme around when you lose Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, and you're just kind of playing guys, maybe before they're ready. Offensively, in terms of Brandon Ayuk, we were talking about this, Rich, I think on this show going all the way back to the end of last season in January and February when there were various rumors would they trade Brandon Ayuk. And what I said then remains true, which was November was kind of the optimistic timeline. He suffered a really bad injury. This was not just a straight ACL. There was real uncertainty about what the timeline would be. And even John Lynch, I believe speaking on local radio yesterday, said, we were still, trying to get him back this season, but there's no absolutes in terms of that. So we'll see. Brandon Ayuk still has not even been designated to return to practice, opening up a 21-day window. So now all of a sudden we're talking about December most likely at the soonest for Ayuk. But Ricky Pearsall, another guy who they thought they'd get back sooner, they didn't put him on injured reserve, but he's got a PCL injury. Those are really tricky. They've had a few of those out there in San Francisco. It took a while for that knee to really regain the stability, but he's going to be good to go. And then in terms of Brock Purdy, the wild thing when you think about it, Rich, was we had 2 turf toe injuries in the opening couple weeks of the season. Joe Burrow's was the one that was clinically significantly worse to the extent that it required surgery. Yet here we are in the second week of November. Joe Burrow is back on the practice field at the same time that we're finally seeing Brock Purdy be back into the starting lineup. He did try to return in week 4. That was the only other time he played after getting hurt in the opener. And it was a lot of them just trying to make sure that this was not something that lingered, that he didn't have another setback that could, sideline him for 4, 5, 6 weeks or potentially hamper him all the way into January. And they still hope February here. It was never something where surgery was on the table for Brock Purdy. It was a different injury than what Joe Burrow had. The issue and where you can have a setback with even a less severe level of that injury is if you bend that foot and it gets torqued and you get that flexion, just like how Joe Burrow went down, the same thing happened when Purdy came back in week 4. It's some bad luck that he's outside the pocket and that thing got bent at a bad angle again. They wanted to be really cautious. It helped that Mac Jones was playing at a high level. They're still in the mix. They got their work cut out. Of course, we got a great Seahawks-Rams showdown coming up this weekend for the top of the NFC West, but the 49ers are very much in the mix in the division as well as in the wild card race. Purdy is still their guy. There's never been any doubt about that. Mac Jones gave him the best he could, and we'll be talking about Mac Jones, I'm sure, Rich, come February and March, and would they trade him? Do they need him to stay on as the NFL's, certainly one of the NFL's top backups. For right now, it is Brock Purdy's time again. And I know that Purdy has been raring to go and remind everybody why they were willing to give him upwards of $50 million a year when they re-signed him back in May.
Let's talk about a couple running backs here in the few minutes that we have left. Bucky Irving, he wasn't IR'd either. But he's out there again. We're wondering what's up with him. And then there's J.K. Dobbins, where there's worry about he could go on IR, but then there's nothing, and then we're hardly hearing anything out of Denver on this front. What can you tell us about these two guys? Two big games here, Bucks, Bills, Broncos, Chiefs, who are also without Pacheco as well. So I guess let's throw him in that mix for the running back conversation here, Tom.
The good news on Bucky Irving is that he was at least spotted on the practice field. How much he actually did, is a matter of debate because he's limited in practice. That can mean he took a lot or a little. He was back out there, but he's not going to play this week. So they're going to continue to roll on with Rachaad White and try to, put that thing together the way that they have. I mean, the Bucs have overcome so much this season. When you talk about the receivers being decimated, the offensive line being decimated, everybody forgets they haven't had their starting running back for the bulk of the season, yet they're still in control right now of the NFC South. With J.K. Dobbins, when he posted something that we can't exactly say some of the words on the show about the hip drop tackle, the way that he was injured in that game. What I was told was, this was a potentially significant foot injury. He was getting a second opinion. I know they've been going through a process this week. They've not yet made a roster move with J.K. Dobbins, but it certainly seems like it's going to be R.J. Harvey for at least the near term here in Denver. And then as for Kansas City, Isaiah Pacheco still not. I have not seen whether or not they've started practice reviews out there today. It's an MCL sprain. Those can be anywhere 2 to 4 weeks usually for the type of MCL that he's got. Seems like it's tracking toward being more Kareem Hunt this week, but they are optimistic that in the next week or two here, Isaiah Pacheco will be back in the running as well.
All right. Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. Well, I mean, these hip drop time. I mean, Scatterbo too, man. What happens with this? There's no flags. Is there a fine? Because I know the league has really been hepped up about this issue, and rightfully so, because this is a significant danger that we could see. And I know we're protecting quarterbacks, but this is significant, and Giants fans are pissed. Broncos fans are pissed. Dobbins is pissed. Like, what happens here after the plays happen?
Well, here's the thing. The bar is really high on what is a hip drop tackle, and it needs to meet all the different criteria in terms of the grasp,
it's like
the
a
dropping
catch.
of weight,
We could
and the
see
landing
what
on
it
the
is.
feet.
We could see it.
But here's what I'm telling you, though, Rich. The Zach Bond tackle on Cam Scatterbo, there was no fine. The tackle on J.K. Dobbins, nothing firm. We'll find out for sure tomorrow, but I am not anticipating a fine in that either. A lot of the tackles that we look at and go, oh, that's the hip drop. That's the one they're trying to get out. They've created this criteria that is really difficult to meet. That's why you don't see very many flags in the game, is because it's hard for the officials to see. The fact that they're not even fining guys in a lot of categories shows you that there's not a lot of these tackles that actually meet the criteria. I would imagine they will go back and look at that in the offseason, see whether or not they need to strengthen that. We know Frankie Louvu got suspended for one, but they ended up walking that back and making that into a $100,000 fine instead. It's certainly an ongoing issue. Offensive players hate it. Defensive players were really nervous about what that would mean in terms of the technique that's allowed in the games, but there was no fine for the Scatterbo hit. I don't think there's going to be a fine for the Dobbins hit. We'll see more of these that everybody's going, that guy should have been thrown out of the game. And the league is essentially saying, under the language of the rule right now, that's not even a foul.
I got to be on the competition committee. I mean, enough's enough. Enough's
Change
enough.
the language, then
Enough's
we
enough.
can see that it's a foul.
Enough's enough. I've had enough of it.
I've got more issues with the catch rule at this point. Some of the plays we're seeing overturned in terms of, there's very minute things now where it's, did the ball move and what does that constitute with 4K
I know
HD
we're getting back into that world where I thought they fixed the catch rule, and I still think so. But listen, before I let you go, got a couple minutes left here. The team that everybody's hitting you up about around the league, your sources are saying, what about this team? Is it the Packers? And all the conversation about LaFleur, or there really is no conversation about that's crazy town to me, that whole thing. But I shouldn't lead the jury here. Which team are people blowing you up about, Tom?
Well, certainly there's been discussion about the Packers just based upon some of the things that have been said and written, and Matt LaFleur being asked about his job status after the game on Monday night. Listen, I was there. I was at Lambeau Field. It was not a good performance, but there were so many factors that go into why Green Bay struggled beyond, hey, it's the head coach, it's the play caller's fault. They did not have Tucker Kraft, who's been their best player on their offense outside of maybe Josh Jacobs this season. He's out for the year with a torn ACL. They haven't had Jaden Reed. They didn't have Matthew Golden that night. Then Romeo Dobbs gets knocked out of the game. I mean, think about this, Rich. If you're talking about why the Packers are where they are, Bo Melton, who's a wide receiver by trade, who got converted to corner in camp, which there's usually a reason you convert a guy from receiver to corner.
Because he can't catch.
Not only is he the number 4 corner for Green Bay right now because Nate Hobbs is out and they've got injuries at that position. If somebody had gotten hurt, he would have been out there as the 3rd corner in that game. But because of all the injuries, Bo Melton became the 3rd receiver in that game. So it's like, oh man, why is Matt LaFleur going for it on 4th and 6? Well, Jordan Love puts the ball in the guy's chest. It's dropped by who? Bo Melton. They got a big play later in the game. It's a shot, I think, to Christian Watson down the field. Gets called back for illegal formation. Oh, how could they take that penalty? Because it's Bo Melton, he's in illegal formation. Hadn't probably practiced that play at all because he's literally playing defense when they're in practice. These are not excuses. Listen, everybody's got injuries. Everybody's got things they need to overcome. We talked about San Francisco and Tampa. Those teams have overcome a lot. The Vikings have been fighting it all year. But we got to take the context into account here. There were certain things happening within that game against, by the way, a really good defense.
Yeah.
If the Packers defense plays the way that they did against the Eagles, they're going to be just fine in the big picture. There are fair questions about how the Packers proceed beyond this season because Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst's contracts are up after 2026. Ed Palsy is a new president and CEO. He has said on the record that they weren't going to address those contracts until after this season. I'm not big, Rich, into speculation mode. I'm not going to make predictions about what the Packers do. I would say I think there is a far better chance of Matt LaFleur and us talking about him being in the playoffs and getting an extension next offseason than him somehow being out of a job in Green Bay. And, oh, by the way, instantly becoming the hottest head coaching name on the market, which is one more reason I just don't see a scenario where Green Bay's letting him go.
I'm with you. Tom Pelissero, thank you for the time. I think you're late for your chemistry class that you're teaching. So there you go.
Sure, you think this is water in this mug.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Pelissero heading off to the Insiders on NFL Network and NFL Plus right here on the Rich Eisen Show.
Buddy.
There he goes. Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.